finally upgraded to Dolby Atmos. You bought the soundbar or the AV receiver, you set everything up, the Dolby Atmos logo appears on your TV screen. And you sit back expecting to be blown away. But the sound is flat. Everything still feels like it's coming from the front of the room, right under the TV. There's no height, no overhead effects, no sense of space. Rain doesn't fall from above. Helicopters don't fly over your head. The whole thing just sounds like slightly fancier stereo. So you start wondering whether Atmos is actually as good as everyone says, or whether you wasted your money. Here's what nobody told you. Your system is not broken, and Atmos is not overrated. Your setup is being held back by one single setting that almost every system ships with in the wrong position, and once you change it, the entire experience transforms. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to fix and how to fix it. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what Atmos system you're using right now. A soundbar, a full AV receiver setup, or something else, and what the sound is doing that's frustrating you. I read every comment, and your question might become the next video. Why Atmos sounds flat out of the box? Let's start by understanding why this problem exists in the first place. Because once you understand the reason, the fix will make complete sense. When manufacturers build soundbars and AV receivers, they tune them to work in the widest possible range of environments. That means apartments with thin walls, small living rooms, late-night listeners who don't want to disturb anyone. To make the system safe and inoffensive for all those scenarios, they ship it in a conservative sound mode by default. Height channels are set lower than they should be. Dynamic range is compressed so loud sounds aren't too loud and quiet sounds aren't too quiet. The whole system is essentially in a restrained, hold-back mode, designed not to bother the neighbors rather than to deliver the cinematic experience Atmos is actually capable of. This is the core problem. Dolby Atmos is a three-dimensional audio format. It's designed to wrap sound around you on all sides and from above, creating what Dolby calls a dome of sound around the listener. But if your system is in standard mode or direct mode, it's not fully utilizing the height channels. The overhead dimension that makes Atmos feel genuinely different from regular surround sound is being severely underused. Instead of sound filling the room from all directions, including above, everything stays anchored to the front soundstage. The result is exactly what you're experiencing: flat, front-heavy audio that barely sounds different from what you had before. The main fix, sound mode selection, the single most impactful change you can make is switching your sound mode. This is the one setting that most people never touch because they assume the default is fine, or because navigating receiver menus feels intimidating. But this is the change that unlocks everything. Go into your receiver or soundbar's sound settings and look for the processing mode or sound mode option. What you're looking for is called Dolby Surround, and on some systems it might appear as movie mode, cinema mode, or adaptive sound depending on the brand. What you want to avoid is standard mode, direct mode, or stereo mode when you're watching Atmos content. Here's why this matters so much. Standard and direct modes apply minimal processing to the audio signal. They're designed to pass the audio through as cleanly as possible without adding anything. That sounds like a good idea in theory, and for certain types of content it is. But Atmos content is designed to be decoded and expanded by the receiver's processing engine. When you put your system in Dolby Surround mode, the receiver actively works to fill the entire speaker array, including the height channels, with the right audio information. It takes the Atmos object-based audio data and places those sounds precisely in three-dimensional space around the room. In standard mode, that spatial expansion simply doesn't happen at the level it should, and the height speakers sit there doing almost nothing while you wonder why you bothered with them. Think of it like this. Imagine you bought a high-performance car, but someone locked it into economy mode before you drove it off the lot. The engine is fully capable of performing, but the system is holding it back to conserve fuel. Switching to Dolby Surround mode is like taking that car out of economy mode and letting the engine breathe. The capability was always there. You just needed to enable it. The second fix, height channel levels. Once you've switched to the right sound mode, the next thing to address is your height channel levels specifically. Even in Dolby Surround mode, the default height channel level is often set too low. Manufacturers do this for the same conservative reasons we talked about earlier. In most systems, the height speakers are balanced to be subtle rather than prominent, because in a badly set up room, overpowering height channels can sound gimmicky. But in a properly set up room, bringing those levels up makes an enormous difference. Go into your receiver or soundbar's speaker level settings and look for something labeled height level, top speaker level, or Atmos speaker level. Raise it by about 2 to 4 decibels above the default setting. Don't go overboard, because if height sounds too loud, they become distracting and obvious rather than immersive. But 2 to 4 decibels is a safe and noticeable improvement for most systems. To test whether the change is working, play a scene with strong overhead content. A rainstorm, a scene with a helicopter or aircraft, anything with environmental sounds that should come from above. With the height levels properly set and the right sound mode enabled, you should suddenly hear the ceiling come alive. Rain should fall from above you. Aircraft should pass overhead. The room should feel acoustically taller than it did before. If you go through this process and still can't hear clear overhead effects, it's worth checking your Atmos speaker placement, which we'll cover shortly. The third fix: turn off dynamic compression. The third setting that quietly ruins Atmos for a lot of people is dynamic range compression. On most systems, this appears as night mode, dynamic volume, or simply dark, which stands for dynamic range compression. This setting is designed to reduce the difference between the loudest and quietest moments in a film, making explosions quieter and dialogue louder so you can watch late at night without waking anyone up. It's genuinely useful in that specific situation. But if you're watching a proper Atmos movie during the day and you want the full cinematic experience, night mode is silently destroying it. The entire emotional power of a film score and sound design depends on dynamic range. When an action sequence erupts after a quiet moment, that contrast is intentional. The audio engineers who mixed that film spent months crafting exactly that impact. Dynamic range compression flattens it out. Everything becomes a similar volume level, the peaks lose their punch, and the quiet moments lose their tension. The result is that flat, lifeless quality that makes even a well-mixed Atmos track sound like background noise. Go into your settings, find night mode or dynamic volume, and turn it off when you're watching Atmos content with full attention. You'll be surprised how much energy returns to the soundtrack. The HDMI connection problem. Now let's talk about a connection issue that prevents Atmos from working at all on a lot of systems, because no setting change will fix a fundamentally broken signal path. Dolby Atmos requires a specific type of connection to travel from your source to your receiver or soundbar. That connection is HDMI eARC, which stands for Enhanced Audio Return Channel. Regular HDMI ARC and optical audio connections cannot carry full Atmos data. They compress the signal and strip out the spatial information that makes Atmos what it is. If you're using an optical cable between your TV and soundbar, or if you've plugged into a regular HDMI port instead of the specific eARC port, you're not receiving real Atmos. You're receiving a downgraded version of the audio that will never sound right no matter what settings you adjust. Check the back of your soundbar or receiver and find the HDMI port labeled eARC. Then check your TV and find the HDMI port that's also labeled eARC, usually HDMI port 2 or 3. Connect them with an ultra-high-speed HDMI cable. Make sure eARC is enabled in your TV's audio settings, because on many TVs it's turned off by default. Once this connection is correct, your TV can pass full Atmos audio from streaming apps and connected sources through to your receiver or soundbar with all the spatial data intact. Virtual surround and why to turn it off for Atmos? Here's a counterintuitive one. Many soundbars and receivers have a virtual surround or spatial audio processing feature that simulates the effect of speakers you don't physically have. For a 2-channel TV speaker or a basic soundbar without real height drivers, this kind of processing can genuinely help. But when you have a real Atmos system with actual height speakers or upward firing drivers, leaving virtual surround processing enabled on top of native Atmos decoding creates a conflict. The system is trying to artificially expand sound that's already been precisely placed in three-dimensional space. And the result is a muddy, confused soundstage where nothing is positioned accurately. Turn virtual surround off when you're playing native Atmos content and let the format do what it was designed to do without interference. The ceiling and speaker placement reality? If you've made all these setting changes and you're still not getting convincing height effects, the issue might be physical rather than digital. Upward firing Atmos speakers work by bouncing sound off the ceiling and back down to your ears. This is a clever solution to the problem of not having in ceiling speakers, but it depends entirely on your ceiling being the right type. A flat, smooth, hard ceiling between about 8 and 12 feet high gives upward firing speakers the best chance of working properly. If your ceiling is vaulted, textured, covered in acoustic tiles, or very high, the reflections are either scattered or too delayed to create convincing overhead sound. In those situations, upward firing speakers simply cannot deliver what properly placed in ceiling speakers can. If you're in this situation, the best long-term solution is adding dedicated in-ceiling or on-ceiling height speakers positioned according to Dolby's layout specifications, typically at about a 25-degree angle above the listening position. For the speakers you do have, whether they're in-ceiling, on-ceiling, or upward firing, make sure your front and surround speakers are correctly placed at ear level so that the height channel contrast is clear. If your surround speakers are already mounted high on the wall, your brain loses the reference point between what's surround level sound and what's overhead sound, and the whole height effect collapses. Correct speaker placement at the right heights gives the Atmos height channels a clear contrast to work against. Streaming quality and why it matters. One more factor worth addressing is the quality of the Atmos signal you're actually receiving from your source. Not all Atmos is created equal. Streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, and Apple TV Plus deliver Atmos audio. But the bitrate is lower than what you get from a physical 4K Blu-ray disc. At lower bitrates, the spatial precision of the Atmos object placement is reduced. Sound objects don't move as smoothly, and the height information is less detailed. This doesn't mean streaming Atmos sounds bad, it can still sound very good. But if you want the absolute best performance from your system, a 4K Blu-ray with a full-resolution Dolby Atmos track is the reference standard. If you've been testing your Atmos setup with a streaming source and wondering why it doesn't quite match what you heard in a demo room, the disc version of the same content will typically sound noticeably better. Here's the complete picture. Dolby Atmos sounds flat on most systems not because the technology is overhyped, but because the default settings actively prevent it from working properly. The single most important change is switching from standard or direct mode to Dolby Surround mode, because that's what tells your system to actually use all those height speakers and expand the soundstage in 3 dimensions. On top of that, raising your height channel levels by a few decibels, turning off night mode and dynamic compression, using a proper HDMI ERC connection, and turning off conflicting virtual surround processing will each contribute to unlocking the experience you paid for. Make these changes tonight, put on a well-mixed Atmos film, and the difference will be immediate and obvious. If this video just saved your Atmos setup, please hit the like button because it genuinely helps more people find this content and fix their systems too. Leave a comment telling me which change made the biggest difference for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because we've got more Atmos guides, speaker setup content, and audio deep dives on the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.